Welcome to the Geek and I podcast. My name is John Biscardi, and once again, we bring in our co-host this week, Mr. Jeff Dickinson. Jeff, how are you, sir?
Most excellent.
Most excellent. Okay, Jeff, thank you very much. Would you like to, let me first start off by showing you what came in the mail for me the other day. I got one of the viewers from our Legion M chat with Jeff Annison sent me this. This showed up. I don't know how they got my address, but this showed up on my doorstep one day. This 6-foot banner
Wow.
for Legion M, and it's
That's awesome.
It's pretty neat. So I want to give a shout out to Lori. Thank you for the banner.
Hey, Lori.
I really appreciate it, and thanks for watching the program. Okay, Jeff, let's bring in our guest this week.
Man, my thing. Oh, dude, I'm so pumped and excited. Check this out. We got this killer guest today. We're talking pop iconic, dude. Wow, I'm holding back my excitement, but I can't. Let's check out this pop icon. Let's welcome to the show. Show him some love, Mr. Butch Patrick.
Well, thank you.
No, it doesn't get any better than that, does it?
You know, when I do this, I had no idea that I would be on Star Trek. I love your opening here. You need William Shatner. Going where no man has gone before.
No, it's just
Right on.
This is the space. This is what's in between Jeff's ears.
This is it. This is it. It's just, I love it.
Hey, man, it's a lot of cool stuff.
And I know I was going to be on this. I would have put my pointed ears on and been Spock.
You still wear those?
Oh yeah, all day long.
Yeah.
He has to be really good looking to ask for the ears.
But they're Bluetooth now, so that kind of helps, right?
Yeah,
Plus,
How
I
are
heard
you?
you get good reception.
Yeah.
absolutely.
How are you, sir? How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you guys?
Doing great. How's we had mentioned, I had asked you where you are at the current moment. I am in Denison, Texas, just on the Oklahoma border. Jeff, you are where in
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, and
I'm in Manhattan Beach, California, but I lived in Austin, Texas in 86, 87, and 88. I enjoyed Austin a lot back then, and I go through Texas quite a bit, but I am currently in Manhattan Beach, California, where it is 72 degrees and clear today.
Oh my gosh.
Nice.
It's 36 here in Denison.
Oh, we should take it outside. Let's make this an exterior shoot.
No.
In a bathing suit.
That's no. Well, not only does the cold not want me to go out in a bathing suit, the viewers don't want me to go out.
The neighbors,
So, and the neighbors would have something to say about that.
Yeah, that's funny. There was a funny line in a movie one time, and for some way it always resonates. Michael Caine was in a movie called Blame It on Rio, and years ago, and he's talking to the camera. He goes, "Sometimes when I take off my clothes, I wish I could leave the room."
That's the way I am.
Well, Butch, I need to start out a question from a lot of our fans and viewers. You were in this really killer show called Lidsville.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Sid and Marty Croft? We're talking HR Puff Stuff fame, but in your own experience, how was that like?
It was very interesting. I was going to high school up at Hollywood Professional, which was a sort of a private school for kids in the business, because it was difficult in public school to keep going back and forth and back and forth. So this woman opened up this school catering to professionals. And I happened to be going to school with the Cowsills, 4 of them. There was John, Susan, Paul, and Barry. I was in Barry's grade. So my agent contacted me and said, there's this Saturday morning show that they're interested in they'd like to see you about it. I go, I don't want to do a Saturday morning. No, that's like, I'm not going to do it. It's like crazy. So she convinced me to go on an interview, which I did. And I met Sid and Marty Croft. And I actually said, no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. And went home. And then Marty called again and said, no, we really, really would like you. Jack Wilde did this, and, we made him a star. And I said, no, Jack Wilde was pretty much a star from Oliver, But I do get it. Puffin Stuff's a big hit. People love it. So I went back up for my second interview just to kind of like see what was going on. And I saw a big picture of the Bugaloos. And there was this cute little girl named Caroline Ellis that was in the Bugaloos. And I said, will she be around? Because if she's going to be around, I'll do the show. So he lied to me and he said yes. And she never did show up. But I wound up, instead of her, I wound up working with a bunch of great people. And Billy Hayes, of course, who was Witchy Poo on Puffin Stuff, played Jeannie. Charles Nelson Riley, who was all over television at that time. Very funny guy. Played Hoodoo. Loved it. And then I got to work with a bunch of little people in Hollywood who I was already friends with. So it worked out really well. And it was actually, to this day, looking back on it, it was a fun summer. It was only 11 weeks and I turned 18 doing it.
Now I have I don't know if you can see that photograph that's up there.
Yes, I can.
Can you make it bigger?
You're pretty tall in this one. So this was, you were 17 going on 18 in this?
No, there's an old thing like, if you're fat and you want to look thin, hang around fatter people. Well, I'm only 5'7", but I'm standing next to a bunch of little people.
Okay.
So I look tall.
All right. And then I have there it is, Jeff. It's a little bit longer.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The specs,
Yeah.
It's interesting because in Hollywood, when you're a kid actor, they never have, your stand-ins are always little people. That not midgets or dwarfs back then, but today it's politically correct, little people. So as you grow, little people become little, larger little people, but you get to work with them all. So everybody on that set, I pretty much was friends with already. So it was really kind of cool that I got to hang around some new friends with Billy and Charles and Sharon Baird, who was the original Mouseketeer. But a lot of the little people I had known. So it was a really cool 11 weeks.
Now I have another one here that. Who are this?
Who's in that? Jerry Marin is in Rah Rah. He was the last living Munchkin, and he was also Little Oscar, and he was paging Philip Morris. He was like the most famous little person in Hollywood. Worked all the time, and also Felix Silla, who you can only see part of Colonel Poom. Felix Silla, who obviously was Cousin It. And Tweaky on Buck Rogers, and he was an Ewok, and I mean, he just did work after, job after job after job. And I met Felix on My Favorite Martian when I was 7 years old. He played my stunt double, or 8 years old. Now, so that's how long I've known Felix.
Now you got the Donnie Osmond hair going on there. Was that?
I actually cut about 4 inches off my hair for this show.
Really?
That was some rocking hair, man.
Yeah, I was looking like I should have been in Zeppelin or The Dead or something. When I went in for my interview, they go, "Oh my God, you're going to have to lose the hair." And it was funny. The reason I cut it was because about a year later, there was a bad story. George Lucas had approached me to cut my hair for a little movie. I was at the beach surfing, and he tracked me down. And I had very long hair surfing, and I come out of the water, and he goes, "Hey, I would really like you to do this movie about these cars up in Modesto in 1962, but you're going to have to cut your hair like a 50s look." And I said, "No way, Mr. Lucas." I had no idea who George Lucas was back then. And American Graffiti came out, and I went, "Oh my gosh, what a big mistake that was." Richard Dreyfuss. He came looking to me to play Richard Dreyfuss's part, and I said, "No, thank you, sir. Good luck with your
No way."
Yeah.
Wow.
But everybody in Hollywood has one of those stories. It's funny. Paul LeMat on that same level, he played Big John Milner. He turned down Star Wars to play Han Solo.
Jimmy.
And a very unknown Harrison Ford, who was the guy that in the race driving the 55, wound up. It was a career changer for him.
Well, I guess that all goes to the the hindsight is 2020, or
everybody in Hollywood's got one of those stories, or two or three.
Right. You never know what you don't know what you don't know. So
it's life is like a box of chocolates.
it all melts in your hand. So
that's right. It all melts.
Yes.
Was that the only big part that you wanted to get that apparently you didn't get?
What? It was Dreyfuss's. It was a starring role. Richard Dreyfuss's part.
Yeah, I mean that was the biggest one that you missed, right?
For me, that was the biggest one I missed. Yeah, I did okay. I was never going to be a career actor. I was simply a kid who stumbled into it and was saving money to buy a race car because And my dream was to be a race car driver, like, whether a fireman or an astronaut. Mine was a race car driver. But situations occurred that when I was 18, I was in the last year of the lottery for Vietnam, and I had a very low number, which meant if you had a low number, you were going to go to Vietnam. And so I got my money out of the bank early, petitioned the court because at that time it was 21, and I got them to change it to 18 so I could get my money out because I thought I was going to go to Vietnam and never come back. So I went and blew all the money that I was saving for my race car because I thought I was going to die. And then lo and behold, when I went up for my induction physical, they found that I had a bad knee, that I didn't qualify for duty. And then they deferred me. They classified me 1H. And it was like, I was happy I wasn't going, but I was really unhappy that they didn't tell me that before. I went and blew all my money.
Right now.
Well, speaking of cars, talking about, let's go back a little bit, the Munsters.
Yeah.
We're getting address the elephant in the room. George Barris did some iconic cars for that show. What was your thoughts on that? And did you ever get the chance to meet the gentleman in person?
Oh, George and I were best friends for 50 years. And my favorite thing to do on Monday morning when we would go in and read the script, if I saw the Munster coach was going to be used, it was a very exciting thing for me for two reasons. Number one, we would be outside, which we didn't see the light of day very often because we were always in the soundstage with a very dark and dingy Munster set. And number two, I would always ride up in the back in the coachman's seat, have the best seat in the house, so to speak. And this was a car that was the most iconic TV car at the time. So I had the best of both worlds. I was riding around in the Munster coach, and I was outside.
So what does it actually feel like to ride in that seat in the back that's above it? You can actually see over the roof.
And there was no seat belt, and Fred had a tendency to pop the clutch, so you better hold on.
So you're popping wheelies down the road, or?
No, we took it out. He took it out one time, unauthorized, out the front gate to Lankershim Boulevard, and went for about a 3-block joyride and came back. But that was the only time we actually drove it on the actual street, although it had been used after that many, many times for parades and such.
Now,
I took it to the TV Land Awards once. I had George drive us up. Instead of a limo, I had the Munster coach, and George actually drove it and drove me and Natalie to the awards, which was excellent.
Which car did you like better? There was that one, and then there was the Dragula, right?
Well, I've got a Munster coach. I have a Munster coach, and I had a Dragula. I would always drive the Dragula because it was like the hot rod car. Even though the coach was fast and had a big block, my coach had a big block Chevy in it. Has a big block Chevy, but the Dragula was always faster and louder. So that would be the car I would drive because it was a single seater, and I was the only. Yeah, there's my car. There you go. So yeah, that was the Dragula was the one that would light him up and get sideways, and had a lot more power per pound ratio.
So you wound up with your sports car after all.
Somewhat, yeah. I always was. Back in '69 when I got my license, my first car was a Mach 1, and I had that for a couple of years, and then I wound up getting a 427, 435 Vet, which was a beast back then. And I always had pretty cool cars as a kid, and muscle cars were all the rage. So I grew up in a really good time. I really enjoyed my childhood. I was born in '53, so I saw a little bit of the '50s, remember a little bit of the '50s, and all of the '60s and '70s. So I couldn't have asked for a better window on life.
Now you had mentioned that you didn't want to be a child actor. Was that something that you wanted to be a race car driver? So how did you get into doing childhood acting?
It wasn't a typical Barbizon John Powers thing. It was basically a friend of a friend in this little town Gardena where I live wanted to be mayor. And to be mayor, he wanted to get my dad's endorsement, who was an influential guy in the area. My little sister was actually the target of the movie plot. I went along for the ride. After they took pictures of her, gentleman who was the photographer to the stars for kids especially, took a couple pictures of me for his own portfolio. And he put a picture in the window of his Hollywood Boulevard studio. He had this put a hat on the kid and kind of get a goofy look about him. And he slapped it in the window, and a producer and a director happened to be walking by, and noticed it. They were casting a movie that required some young kid, 2 kids actually. They had already cast one, and they had the younger little brother they hadn't cast yet, and they liked the look, and they tracked me down, and the guy said, he's not an actor. This is just a photo that he took. So I went up for this interview, and they basically, no experience necessary, liked that I could interact with them, and I wasn't intimidated by the process. I was 7 years old, and they hired me for this movie. And it was a great first time, entry level movie. But it starred, it was called The Two Little Bears, and it starred Eddie Albert as my dad, and Jane Wyatt from Father Knows Best as my mom. Soupy Sales was the comic relief cop. Nancy Culp was the school teacher. Brenda Lee, 15 years old, singing sensation, was my older sister. So I worked for 6 weeks doing this movie, and during that 6 weeks, I picked up a Kellogg's Cornflakes commercial and a General Hospital. So I was on the first episode ever of General Hospital, and that was, pretty much the beginning of it.
And how did that turn into Eddie Munster? Did you audition?
Well, I just continued to work, and I did a lot of guest starring roles and a lot of little movies and this and that, a lot of commercials. And then 1964, I had just finished A Year of the Real McCoys, and I went with my grandma back to Illinois to live with her because my mom had married a baseball player with the LA Angels, but he got traded to the Washington Senators. So the whole family moved to the East Coast, and there was pretty much nobody in the house. So my grandma said, well, I'll take him. And I went back to Illinois, and the agent found out that they weren't happy with who they had cast in the show, in the pilot. The networks wanted a different mom and a different kid. So she got him to fly me out, and I went to the studio directly from the airport for a screen test with Yvonne DiCarlo. And they basically said, make arrangements to get to work, and lived with my uncle, hired a woman every day to take me to work. And that's how I became Eddie Munster.
Now, who was the favorite that you would hang out with on set? Because I mean, I grew up coming home from school every day watching the Munsters on TV, and I always kind of gravitated towards Herman because he was the goofy guy. He was tall like my dad was. I just watched an episode yesterday on Cozy TV called Herman the Rookie, where he
baseball one, yeah.
He does the baseball thing, and who did you gravitate to on set?
Well, I'll just give you a typical day. Number one, Mike Westmore was an apprentice makeup man at the time, and I was his first job, his first charge in the morning. He had to make me up, put my ears on, and get me started. And everybody knows who Mike Westmore is. He won an Oscar for Mask, and he's the guy on his daughter, Mackenzie Westmore, does Face Off. And so anyway, Mike and I, when you're in the chair for an hour and he's the first person you see at the studio, you kind of bond with him. And I admired him, and he was handsome, and he was young, and he wore an ascot. He drove a Jaguar. He was a bachelor. He was like, oh, that's my kind of guy. So my day would start with chatting with Mike. And I found out that I had the power of the pen very early. So I would always order breakfast for people to come up, people that were working with me in the room, and we'd all have breakfast together, and I'd nibble on stuff. But after I would leave Mike, I would go to the set, and Fred taught me the most, Fred taught me the most about actual acting techniques, because we had a lot of father and son scenes that evolved. Originally, Eddie didn't really have a lot of dialogue. A lot of times kids in network series are secondary characters. They're kind of there to set up a scene or to set up a script idea, but they're not really in the meat of the dialogue.
Right.
Well, early on, they found out that I could handle dialogue, and they really enjoyed the fact that I was like a little adult. They used to call me a 39-year-old midget because they said, there's no way this kid's only 11 years old. He acts too old. So Fred was a very tall, childlike character. So they started writing these scripts that would feature Eddie volunteering Herman for something. Father and son shows were very popular. So the script I wound up getting a lot of scripts written for me to work with Fred, and he would teach me acting techniques, which was very, very cool. And the shows were really popular. Grandpa, on the other hand, had the time to spend with me when the cameras weren't rolling outside tossing a baseball. He was a big sports fan. So he taught me a lot about life. Fred taught me a lot about techniques and acting, but between the two of them, I learned a lot.
Now,
Nice.
Did you have a favorite set that you like to work in? I love the dungeon. Whenever they went down to the dungeon, I was glued to the TV as a kid. Now, was there one that you enjoyed working on?
I'll tell you a funny. With my book Munster's Memories. When the editor said, "Okay, it's time for your memory," the whole book was based about people's memories of the show, and I said, but the Munsters was my job. And yes, to answer your question briefly, yes, the dungeon was my favorite set. But my favorite memory was when they would say, I would look at the call sheet and I would know that I would have a window of, say, an hour before lunch, and an hour after lunch. So I didn't have to really be back for 3 hours. I would know that. And that's when I would say, okay, I'm going to go explore it, just pure explore. And where would I explore? Well, I had the Universal Studios at my disposal to go poke my nose in sound stages, go visit McHale's Navy at the Lagoon, go up and see my uncle who supplied horses to Wagon Train in the Virginian, go back to the lab and see what Mike Westmore was working on, or go down to the commissary and freak people out by acting like one of the mannequins and then come to life and scare them. So I literally had this entire studio at my disposal because I knew how to enter a soundstage without causing them to have to reshoot anything. I knew how to be quiet, and I knew all the routines, and they knew I was supposed to be there because I'm in makeup. So that was my favorite thing to do, was go explore the sets and explore the studio. And
you had mentioned that on Lidsville you worked with Charles Nelson Riley, mm-hmm. and the movie working with Soupy Sales.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite recurring guest on the show?
A recurring guest? Well, I really like Paul Lynde as Dr. Dudley. I thought he was hilarious. Harvey Korman did a couple episodes, but Dr. Dudley, because I actually interacted with him, there was a scene where Eddie's nickname where I grew a beard, and we went and saw Dr. Dudley. Bill Mooney did a guest star and Come Back Little Googie. And originally on the Munsters, they wanted Bill Mooney to be Eddie Munster, and his mom didn't like the idea of the makeup, so they basically eliminated Bill Mooney because of that. And then they hired Happy Durman, and then the networks didn't like Happy Durman. So I really, it must have been fate for me to wind up being Eddie Munster, because it certainly was. I wasn't their first choice. It's not like I went up and didn't get an interview. I just wasn't in town during the casting. So I just lucked out that the network stepped in and said, we don't like the mom and we don't like the kid. Recast those two and we'll move forward.
Now,
I saw the pilot. I have all the DVDs. Well, on DVD. So I saw the pilot and I was like, that's a whole different show. That was amazing that they got rid of what they did. And where you at today? Let me bring you to another memory, if you don't mind. Spot, you had a really cool pet. What was your thoughts about?
He was actually he was actually used in the I think it's called the Lost World or Forbidden World. I think it was the Lost World. In the early 50s at Universal, they created a kind of a small T-Rex kind of dinosaur that was used, and they never throw anything away in the studios because you never know when you'll need it. And Spot was regurgitated into our family pet. But when you mentioned about the two different show with the different people, the biggest change for the better. I mean, thank you. I was happy that I got in there myself. But Yvonne DiCarlo was a huge star, and her name above the line type movie star knowledge. I mean, her recognition as a movie star really helped sell the show a lot, because Fred and I were from Car 54, and that was great. But Yvonne DiCarlo, movie star coming into a TV, and handling Lily Munster comedy, she was really a secret weapon that I think her addition to the cast was instrumental in its success.
Well, it's excellent. Yeah, I agree.
When you're at the when they went from Beverly to Pat, mm-hmm. Did that take a little getting used to?
What happened with that is it was Beverly. The story about, I don't know if you know this. Beverly went out to do a pilot. Her agent said it would never see the light of day. Go out for the paycheck. You'll be home in a week. That was what her agent told her.
Right.
Lied to her. And yet at the same time, the show on paper, it was very, there was no guarantees this was going to fly, because nobody really knew if it was going to be accepted. It was so one of a kind and so out there that on paper is like, oh, come on, give me a break. This will never work. But it became a huge hit. And Beverly, bless her little heart, she was in love with the guy in New York. And she was very homesick and very miserable during the first 13 weeks. And finally, Fred and Al went to the producers and said, you've got to let her go home. this isn't fair. This is like harsh and unusual punishment. And they go, hell no. She's an integral part of the success of this show, and she's not going anywhere. And Fred and Al, to their benefit, I mean, to their respect for this, is they told the producer, if you don't let her go, we will quit. You won't have a show at all. So there's your options.
Wow.
And they basically let her go. Didn't like the idea, but if you'll notice, the first 13 episodes with Beverly, the dynamics of the show is much different than the Pat Priest shows, where originally the scripts were very much geared about Marilyn trying to find love and a boyfriend. A boyfriend's dropping her off at the house, running away when they see the family, her walking in, oh, Uncle Herman, what's wrong with me? And it was very much like judging a book by its cover. It looked deeper than the skin, all that kind of stuff. It was very different with Beverly. The show structure with Pat, bless her heart, she came in, did a really good job, but the show shifted gears to where now it became like Herman and Grandpa and Eddie getting into mischief in the dungeon, Lily and Marilyn teaming up to do stuff in the kitchen, and it became more of a separation where Marilyn wasn't in the forefront as much.
So there really was a family dynamic between in those first 13 episodes where everybody stood up and said, this is what it's going to be, or we're not going to do it wrong.
You got to remember, it was the 60s. A lot of social upheaval, a lot of civil rights stuff going on, a lot of, color, and like I was jokingly said, I said, we were like the first people of color to be on TV starring the show. We just happened to be green.
Right.
But there was very, very much a soft social statement being introduced in the show, because people would be not wanting to live next door to the Munsters, or they would be scared of the Munsters. They would be intimidated by the Munsters. And the people that had produced it had done Leave It to Beaver. And before they did Leave It to Beaver, they did Amos and Andy. So they had it in their DNA about doing this kind of stuff. So it was actually we were like the first mainstream sitcom to have Herman and Lily sleep in the same bed.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So
not easy being green, man.
When your show premiered, I think I'm not sure if I have it the right way around, but you were either the week after or the week before the Addams Family.
Yeah, we were the Thursday after their Friday. They premiered like on the 18th, and we premiered on the 24th.
Now, was there any competition between those two, or
had we been, if we had been against each other head to head, yes, but because we were on different nights, no. It was actually we helped each other's existence, because whether you preferred one or the other, you probably watched us both.
Well, that's the thing is, my progression has been, kind of like the way it's been with Gilligan's Island. When I was a kid, I liked Marianne. Yeah. When I got into high school, all of a sudden Ginger was my favorite. So growing up, I was a big fan of the Munsters, and then I got into my teenage years in my 20s, and I really enjoyed the humor on the Addams Family. But now that I'm older and I have kids,
back to the Munsters.
I'm back to the Munsters, and that fun, goofy type of.
One of the things, here's something that a lot of people, they can't put their finger on why they enjoy the Munsters so much. And I mean, it's like, Paul McCartney, Howard Stern, Rob Zombie. It's got a very long list of celebrity people, but it's got a huge audience in just mainstream. Because I go out, like I say, my book is called Munster Memories. I've been at the table and I met nothing but people who come to the table with a big smile on their face. And they grew up with their grandpa, their favorite memory as a kid. Grandpa's no longer with us, but we used to sit and watch the Munsters, and he would laugh, and he loved it, and Herman was his favorite, or my favorite was Grandpa. But they've all got these very distinct, fond memories. Warm, fuzzy feeling comes about them. And it's like, how can you not enjoy, engaging with these people that you grew up in their household. They consider you a friend of the family. It's an amazing situation. But one of the things that I always tell people is that people aren't aware of, the Munsters was an extremely well-produced show. It had great sets, it had great editing, it had great camera work, it had great guest stars, great music, cool cars. There's not one weak link in that show. And when you put together something of quality nature, that's what keeps people coming back to it, because it's just so damn well done.
Right. Now, why did it end after only 2 seasons?
Couple things. Number two, black and white to color. The transformation of network programming was going into color. There was a little bit of a cost analysis between who's going to pay for it. Was it going to be Conley and Mosier? Whether it's going to be CBS. Number two, Batman. We had gone through 3 different shows that had been put up against us, and we beat them all. Batman, they brought Batman on to knock us off, and they did. Batman took ratings away from us. He was very popular, and it was a color show. Number 3 was the ratings were down a little bit. Batman was doing well. Number 3, Fred and Al were from New York, and they had been out into the West Coast for 2 years. Fred had had some tragedy in his life, and he and Al, I think, were ready. They thought the scripts were getting weak. I think they were ready to go back to New York. Fred was tired of doing the show. He was, he was losing weight. It was tough on him as a physical specimen, and he took a lot of, his body took a lot of abuse. I think those contributing factors all just said, let's just make a movie, Munster Go Home, in color. It'll satisfy everybody. We'll introduce the Munsters to the world, do a movie, set up a syndication package with only 70 episodes. And they felt that they could do it because they knew the toys were selling so well. There was merchandise like it was merchandise like nobody's business. So they knew that it would have longevity. I don't think they ever foresaw that it was going to be around for 50 years because, syndication wasn't really tested yet. It was sort of a very in its infancy, whether or not people would watch shows that had already been seen and whether advertisers would pay for the spots. And as we all know, syndication became like the gold mine of all, TV producers and production companies.
Right. Do you still watch the show when you turn them through Cozy TV or Antenna TV? Do you catch it every once in a while?
Yeah, I watch certain episodes. Or if somebody asks me if somebody that I like, they want me to watch it with them. Yes, I will. But there's certain episodes that I'll watch again. It's like The Honeymooners. There's certain episodes I'll watch over and over and over, like Twilight Zone. We all have our favorite.
Do you have a favorite episode that you sit down and you say, this one's on, I'm gonna stop?
Well, I like Herman the Rookie because my stepdad, who wanted to be an actor, the baseball player, got his one and only acting job thanks to me. No, Fred and Al actually got it for him because they liked Kenny, and Kenny was a ball player, and he was the catcher. No, not me, Leo. I'm going back to the minors. And the irony of it was he actually did go back to the minors for the Chicago Cubs, which Leo DeRocher was managing, and that's when he ended his career because he had dislocated his shoulder. He was a really good player and had a bad break with a right shoulder dislocation during a game, which cost him his throwing arm. He never really had the same arm after that, and he was a center fielder. And without a big cannon, in center field, they moved him to first base. But anybody that knows baseball, an outfielder's an outfielder. It's hard to transfer a guy to first base. It's a difficult transition. But Kenny, when came up through the Yankees, he was Mickey Mantle's roommate. He's buried next to Roger Maris. Big baseball, coming from North Dakota. He had a big career ahead of him, and unfortunately, it was cut short at 5 years because of his injury. I loved Eddie's nickname because of the Paul Lynde and the beard. Just a 10-year-old kid with a beard just looked funny to me, and it was a funny episode. A Hot Rod Herman, where we go to the drag strip and we introduce the Dragula, is one of my favorites because that gave us a second cool car. And Zombo with Louis Nye, where I go on what I consider to be a TV show, and I'm very disillusioned when I find out that Zombo doesn't really live in a house like we have, and he's not really what he is on TV.
That one, I can remember that one. The first time I saw that one really freaked me out a little bit because Zombo was a little spooky looking.
Yeah. And it was funny, the fact that, we go in and they think that we're dressed up for it. And I go to the producer, I go, what's the matter with Zombo's house? Everything's crummy. Isn't anything real around here? He goes, real? It's television, Eddie. Nothing's real.
Now, when you're on set in a show like that and there's spider webs and dust everywhere, is it like, do you get it on you? Like, is it in your face? Do you get it in your eyes and go, hold on a second, I can't see because somebody patted the couch down?
No, the cobwebs were rubber. They were liquid rubber, so that wasn't bad. They get on your clothes and ball up, and you'd get it off you. The worst thing was the smoke when we would get stuck, when we'd be coming out of the dungeon. Well, that was just a big, kind of like a 6-foot deep pit with steps down there, and they would shut the door, and they would fill it up with smoke, and you have to hold your breath and wait for action, so that when the door opened, the smoke would come, come emitting out of the dungeon. That was the worst, is when you had this sort of like really, the smoke in that tight confines in the dungeon entrance. That was the worst. Other than that, it was easy.
Yeah, is the Raven still alive, or as the Raven?
That clock just sold. It's funny, that clock just sold at auction for like $118,000.
Whoa!
I didn't buy it.
Me neither.
I would have, but I knew.
Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Well, I gotta end. I want to tell people a couple things. Number one, Munsters.com. I've owned it for almost 30 years. I actually spoke with Universal Studios the other day, and they for some reason it came under their radar, and they questioned it like, "Hey, you got Munsters.com?" I go, "Yeah," and then they looked into it, and they found out that I'm a good ambassador for the show, that I do good quality stuff, and there's nothing nefarious going on. So if anybody wants anything to do with Munsters or my schedule or what's going on next year, because I am going to be touring around, I got a really cool Munsters and Magic. I'm working with an illusionist named David Merlin, and we're going to go out to theaters and kind of recreate a big fan. In the 40s and 50s, evenings out, they had a thing called a movie and magic, and we're going to show Munster Go Home on Blu-ray with Rob Zombie and my commentary. Then I'm going to do an introduction of Q&A and do that, and then I'm going to introduce David Merlin, who's going to be doing another hour of illusions with two. He has his own show, but we've integrated and inserted two Munster illusions. One with the coffin. The coffin phone booth, which someone will get into and disappear. It would be great. And then we're also going to have an illusion where we levitate a Marilyn out of the audience. I go find a 125-pound or less person, because that is how it works. And we will turn her, if she's not a blonde, we'll put a blonde wig on her. And if she doesn't wear a polka dot dress, we'll give her one. And we're going to elevate a Marilyn from the audience, but it's going to be fun. We're going to go all over the country, because some of the hardest hit businesses have been theaters. They have been closed down for the entire year. And I have my Munster coach, so it's going to be the Munster here. I'll even show you a picture of what the poster looks like. It's really cool. I'm very excited about this, because this is something that I really enjoy. And here is I don't know if I'll put this up. I think you'll be able to see this. Let's see. Can you
make it big, John?
Hold on.
Whoa, that's badass, bro.
I don't know. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing that. And number two, we did a pilot for a new show called Toy Scouts, where a gentleman goes all over the country and buys toys, and it's kind of like American Pickers, where I'll be his sidekick or wingman, where we find huge collections of people. Huge collections that people own. Not only TV shows, but whatever it may be. And then we go out and do buying tours, and that'll be called Toy Scouts. So it's a little bit of kind of like Collector Call, but it's also like American Pickers with a little bit of this. And plus, during the road trips, I get to look for barn finds of muscle cars that have been lost and found. So that's going to be something I'm looking forward to. So,
well, if there's a stop that you're going to make here in the Dallas area, please let us know. And
the Munster Mansion.
Yes.
Waxahachie, Texas, and I'll sign off with that. If you're ever in the Waxahachie area, there's a mansion out there. It's Chuck and Sandra McKee, are good friends of mine. I've known them about 15 years. I actually stayed in that house for the grand opening Halloween, when they first introduced it to the public, and it is a spot on, no pun intended, duplicate of the Munster Mansion. And it's one thing, and here's the interesting part. It's one thing to look at the outside of it and see it, which is nice, but the inside was the trick. She decorated it exactly like the Munster Mansion. That, to me, was the hard part. I mean, building it, that was tough. Chuck put in a lot of, he built it, but she decorated it, which is amazing. I mean, it's got the right threshold, the front door. It's got the coffin phone booth. It's got spot under the stairs. It's a must-see, and now she's doing murder mysteries out of it. So if anybody wants to go out and see the house and do a murder mystery, they need to check into the Munster Mansion in Waxahachie.
Yeah, I was on their website actually yesterday, and I saw that, and I think my wife has always been wanting to do a murder mystery. So I think
please going out there. It's amazing. They do such a good job. And the sidebar is you get to see the Munster Mansion as well.
Yeah. I think that, don't tell anybody, but that might be her Christmas present this year.
Okay.
It's a good thing she doesn't watch the show.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Merry Christmas. We hope to talk to you. Like I said, if you're going to be swinging by the Dallas area with the show, please hit us up, and we'd love to. We'd come and meet you in person. Maybe not shake hands in these times, but bump elbows maybe.
All right, no worries. Boom, got it.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Take care.
Merry Christmas. Oh, Jeff, let me tell you something. I don't know what to say. That was
goosebumps, brother. Goosebumps.
I do have goosebumps. I mean, growing up as a kid, watching, and still to this day, like I said, I watched 4 episodes. I record 4 episodes on my TiVo every day off of Cozy TV, and I watch it. Whenever I need a good laugh or a good smile, or just to bring memories of my parents, and living back home. It's one of those shows that will be with me forever. And I can't wait until my grandson is old enough to sit down and watch a little bit of the Munsters. Maybe I can be grandpa.
He's pop culture royalty right here, man. We're blessed to have him aboard. Patrick, thank you, my sir, for sharing time with us, with everybody here, especially at the Geek and I podcast, because what we're always about is pop culture and movies and extraordinary souls. So yes, today you got the bonus round.
That was certainly was a bonus, and thank you, Jeff, for being here again. We really appreciate your time, and for news, information, and anything you need to know in the world of geek, you can visit geeknewsnow.net. We are part of the Geek News Now podcast network. Find them online at geeknewsnow.net or on Facebook at Geek News Now. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Geek and I podcast. And this week we are sponsored by Metallic Dice Games. For everything you need for your gaming experience, use code GNN at checkout and save 10%. You can get, I don't know if you play those tabletop games with the 100-sided die that you need a magnifying glass to see the numbers. You can get those at metallicdicegames.com, and just remember to punch in GNN at checkout and save 10%. So once again, thank you, Jeff, for another week of broadcast excellence.
I got something to tell you, though.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Tell me.
Well, the Collector Zone has a special unboxing. It's this guy right here. It's a Dragon Slayer miniature authentic game. So check out the video. I have a link below on how you get one too, for you.
For me, or for in general?
Well, for everybody.
Okay. That's cool. I would take one of those. Christmas is coming, Jeff. Remember.
Tell you.
There you go. Thanks a lot. And Jeff, as you say all the time, we will
see you on the next one. Laters.
Laters.